Hello there folks, my name is Spoonks and welcome back to an episode of Box Office Chat. This is the show where I break down the top 5 domestic box office results, see where each movie landed, and see how well each movie did. So let's get started. Number 5 was Solo Mio, making $6.5 million this weekend, bringing its domestic total to $17 million. That total stays the same worldwide as it hasn't been released in any international countries yet. So a really stupendous hold for Solo Mio. My goodness, just a 7% drop off from last weekend. Obviously, the Super Bowl largely affected the film's opening weekend, so I guess, more people were available. Obviously, being that this was also a rom-com, it made the most out of Valentine's Day, but still, though, the fact that this was able to really hold as well as it has is rather impressive, to say the least. It's certainly going to become one of Angel Studio's biggest films for sure. It does show that the studio doesn't have to follow the faith-based formula. It can produce and release some other movies and make those really successful. And this movie has been really successful. I didn't mention it last week, but this is a $4 million movie. It's on its way to quintupling that, so it's not like it needs any more money. But I think this is definitely going to be a sleeper hit, certainly for Angel Studios, and is going to be Kevin James's biggest theatrical movie in a long time, so he's pretty happy about it. The word of mouth and response seems to be really positive, many people enjoying it. Yeah, just a really solid second weekend for the film. Number 4 was Send Help, making $8.8 million this weekend, bringing its domestic total to $49 million and its worldwide total to $73 million. Send Help also really doing well this weekend. It had quite the rebound after the Super Bowl slump, and even then, with this movie, the Super Bowl slump wasn't even that big to begin with, so this movie's still holding really well, especially this weekend with just a 3% drop off from last weekend. That is sensational. My goodness, just the word of mouth has just been absolutely stellar with this film. I think it's having a bit of that Housemaid effect where just the movie's so ridiculous and so nuts. That's just the talk of the town with this movie. Everyone's just going, this movie is wild, you gotta go and see it. And because of that, not only is it going to become the first film domestically to surpass the $50 million milestone, but it's also on its way to doubling its budget worldwide. Again, the film was $40 million, and look where it's at worldwide. This movie is really just legging itself out. And what's even more vindicating is that there was recently an article by The Wrap, I think it was interviewing like the writers or just some of the filmmakers working on the movie, and they discussed how the movie was originally going to be released by Sony, but then COVID happened and they were ultimately gonna just dump this onto streaming. Sam Raimi didn't like that and he moved over to 20th Century Fox, and now look what happened to it. It's just quite become our first big surprise hit, and just look at all of this money that would have been left on the table had it just been dumped onto Netflix or something. Again, when Sam Raimi tells you that he's putting his movie in theaters, you listen. I would say Sony is kicking themselves right now, but they have another movie that's doing really well right now, so they might be hitting themselves a bit here, but still though, again, really impressive stuff for Send Help. Truly one of our first surprises of the years, and a pleasant one at that. Really happy it's been doing really well. Number 3 was Crime 101, opening with $14 million this weekend, and including the President's Day numbers, it adds to a domestic total of $16 million and a worldwide total of $28 million. I barely discussed this movie last week. I just had very low expectations for this movie. I didn't think it was going to completely bomb, but given the competition and the lackluster marketing, I just didn't have many hopes. And in some ways, it did exceed a bit of my expectations. I think the reviews really helped the movie out. Critics certainly really dug it, and I think the star power of it, Chris Hemsworth, Halle Berry, Mark Ruffalo, boosted interest, as well as the fact that you don't get these types of movies in theaters as much nowadays. So there were things that really benefited and boosted this movie. And if this movie was on the cheaper side, I'd probably be a bit more optimistic about its box office. It's not a fantastic start, but there's a chance this movie could leg out. But the problem is it's not cheap, folks. This is a $90 million movie. It is going to need a lot of help just to get back to that initial budget. There's a chance it could get close to there, but the thing is, with the box office, you need to at least double your budget in order to be a success, and I'm concerned if that will happen, as the response to the film as far as audiences go seemed to be rather split. Again, critics really liked it. It's sitting at like an 85% last I checked on Rotten Tomatoes, but again, audiences don't seem to be as enthusiastic over this movie. It got a B on Cinema Score, so yeah, a bit divisive with audiences, so we'll see how that affects the film's performance. Again, there could be some ways this movie turns into a somewhat sleeper hit, quote-unquote sleeper hit. Maybe it just surpasses expectations and does better than what most people expect it to. But in terms of being a box office success and doubling that budget, it's looking like a rocky road to get to that point. So yeah, not the best start for Crime 101. There's ways they could salvage this. Again, maybe with strong legs, it can turn out to surprise a bit. Hey, it'll do better than we thought it did. But as far as box office success and doubling that budget, it's going to be tough to get there. Number 2 was GOAT, opening with $27 million this weekend, and including the President's Day numbers, it adds to a domestic total of $35 million and a worldwide total of $50 million. Of course, this is the biggest opening for a family and animated film this year. There isn't much else out right now outside of smaller animated movies and re-releases, so it sits on the podium by itself. But in terms of Sony Pictures Animation, it is the 9th biggest opening in the studio's history. It topped Peter Rabbit, but it still sits behind both Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs movies, Into the Spider-Verse, The Smurfs, all 3 Hotel Transylvania movies, and Across the Spider-Verse, and it's the 2nd biggest opening of the year overall. It sits behind a certain other movie we'll get to soon, but it was still able to top Send Help, Iron Lung, and Crime 101. I had high hopes for this movie, but the fact that it overperformed to this degree is really impressive. I saw some people having concerns about this movie's performance, considering last year which original animated movie was successful and which one was not. Many were concerned like, okay, K-pop was just a Netflix thing. Can Sony make magic happen in theaters? Leo bombed in theaters, so that was like a bit of the concern there, but it turns out they were able to accomplish that. This really did overperform and exceed even my expectations. I think the marketing really sold this movie, and especially considering how much they ramped it up as we got closer to the release. I think that helped it out a lot. The fact that it was the first major animated movie in a while, and I'm sure a lot of families were more than eager to take their kids to see something other than Zootopia 2. The buzz was really strong, and the release date especially helped this out. It had the benefits of Valentine's Day, President's Day, and the NBA All-Star Game all around the same weekend. Like, that's just the perfect trifecta right there. But what really helped this movie out has been the response towards the movie as we got further into the weekend. Like we've seen with a lot of surprise openings this past year, these past couple months, the word of mouth really took over, and as we got further into the weekend, like I said, the numbers just kept going up. People have been really enjoying this movie, and the word's gotten out that a lot of people have, and more people are deciding to go and check it out. Critics really liked it. It's sitting at an 80% on Rotten Tomatoes, but audiences especially are enjoying this. It got an A on Cinema Score. In terms of recent animated films, it puts it on par with Zootopia 2 and David, so good stuff there, good signs there. It's got no competition for the next 3 weeks until Hoppers in March, so plenty of time to grow, plenty of time to really set itself apart from everything else, and it's continuing to impress, as it was reported that while it wasn't the number 1 movie this weekend, it did top Sunday, and odds are it's going to top President's Day as well. Again, just the numbers for this thing keep going up. The word of mouth is just so strong on this movie. Yeah, I know it wasn't the number 1 movie of the weekend, it wasn't the winner of the week, the definitive winner of the weekend, but I think this really was the winner of the weekend. The future's looking bright, the opening weekend strong, and it overperformed to such a high degree. Really happy, really impressed with how well GOAT did. And finally, let's end the video off with the number 1 movie of the weekend, which was Wuthering Heights, opening with $32 million this weekend, and including the President's Day numbers, it adds to a domestic total of $38 million and a worldwide total of $83 million. This is, of course, the biggest opening of the year thus far. It topped GOAT, Send Help, Iron Lung, and Crime 101, and it is the 8th film released by Warner Brothers to hit #1 in a row, so Warner Brothers got something to celebrate. Their winning streak continues. Now look, I don't want to say this is a bad opening because this is far from it. It's our first $30 million opener of the year. It made back its $80 million budget in a weekend. It crushed Valentine's Day, you know. On those aspects, it did everything it needed to do. I still think the marketing helped the movie out. They really sold the movie well to some people. So there was that. And hey, you know, it was still the #1 movie of the weekend. Again, Warner Brothers ain't complaining about that. However, going into this weekend, you gotta be at least a little disappointed by the numbers here, because this thing was expected to like dominate. This was supposed to crush this weekend. You know, I saw people saying, well, this is going to do 50 million, maybe even 60 million over the weekend, given the legacy of the book, the star power, and obviously Valentine's Day. Again, it crushed Valentine's Day, but after that, it just seemed like it just lost steam, especially with the pre-sales. They were really lagging, slowing down. The hype was just, you know, getting smaller and smaller as we got closer to the weekend. It did the opposite of GOAT in that regard, as it seems that just a lot of people just didn't feel the hype anymore, and those who did choose to see the movie were left really unsatisfied with the film. Fans of the book weren't happy, and general audiences don't seem to be really won over by the movie either. And in fact, it's pretty wild that critics and audiences are pretty much unified in their division with this movie. Critics are mixed, audiences are mixed. It's sitting at like 64% last I checked on Rotten Tomatoes, and it got a B on CinemaScore. I know some people are going to argue, well, The Housemaid got a B as well, and look how well that movie did. But again, the response to those movies was much different. I saw more people leaving The Housemaid much more satisfied than people leaving Wuthering Heights. Again, just a lot of people who left disappointed and wanting more. So I can't imagine this movie has strong staying power, solid legs. I think this is going to be really, really front loaded. So yeah, it still won the weekend. And again, this is not a bad opening at all. I'd even say it's a really good opening, but considering the high expectations for it going into this weekend and how the future looks for this film, you can't deny things aren't looking like super good for it. Definitely disappointing, definitely a bit of an underperformer, but hey, you know, it still was able to accomplish what it set out to do, at least. So at least it has that. And those were your top 5 domestic box office results for this weekend, and normally this would be the part of the video where I discuss the upcoming new wide releases and seeing where they would land in the top 5, but it's looking like a bit of a slow down weekend, especially considering how massive this Valentine's Day weekend was. The only new wide releases, I can only imagine 2. I think it's going to play well for its target audience, but outside of that, I'm not expecting much for the film. Outside of that, no like real like overperformance for it. Really, I could be wrong, but hey, that's just how I'm feeling. I'm not expecting much for it. So yeah, it's gonna be a bit of a slower weekend. I'm not expecting like a rough or a horrible weekend at the box office. I certainly think the newcomers are probably gonna hold well and shake things up, but as far as like the newcomers, it's gonna be a bit slower weekend than what we usually see. But we'll see how well the movies that land in the top 5 do next week on the next Box Office Chat. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Box Office Chat. What did you all think of the results? Were you satisfied, unsatisfied? Comment down below and let me know. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like this channel, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all those social media links right there. And until next time, everyone, stay sharp.